The Samuel Woodward case stands as a chilling testament to the perils of extremist ideologies infiltrating modern society. In January 2018, the brutal murder of 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein, a promising university student, shocked the nation and drew attention to the alarming rise of hate-driven violence. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered disturbing connections between the perpetrator and neo-Nazi groups, shedding light on the dark undercurrents that can lead to such heinous acts. This documentary aims to unravel the complexities of the case, exploring the events leading up to the crime, the subsequent investigation, and the broader societal implications of hate-fueled violence.
On January 2, 2018, 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein, a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, was home in Lake Forest, California, for winter break. That evening, he informed his parents he was meeting a friend and left the house, leaving behind his wallet, glasses, and credit cards. When Blaze failed to return home and missed a scheduled dentist appointment the following day, his parents grew concerned and reported him missing to the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Investigators quickly identified Samuel Woodward, the 20-year-old former high school classmate of Blaze, as the last person to have seen him. Woodward told authorities that he had picked up Blaze that night, and they drove to Borrego Park, where Blaze exited the vehicle to meet another friend. Woodward claimed he waited for an hour before leaving, stating he hadn't seen Blaze since. Despite Woodward's account, inconsistencies emerged. Surveillance footage and cell phone records contradicted his timeline, and forensic evidence began to mount. On January 9, 2018, a week after Blaze went missing, searchers discovered his body in a shallow grave within Borrego Park. He had been brutally stabbed over 20 times, a clear indication of a violent and personal attack. The discovery of Blaze's body devastated his family and friends, who had held out hope for his safe return. The community, known for its safety and close-knit nature, was left in shock and mourning. Vigils were held, and the hashtag #BlazeItForward began trending on social media, encouraging acts of kindness in his memory. As the investigation progressed, authorities uncovered disturbing details about Woodward. Digital evidence revealed his association with the Atomwaffen Division, a neo-Nazi extremist group known for its violent ideology. Messages and online posts linked Woodward to hateful rhetoric, particularly targeting Jewish and LGBTQ individuals. This information shifted the investigation's focus, suggesting that Blaze's murder was not a random act but potentially a hate crime. On January 12, 2018, Samuel Woodward was arrested and charged with Blaze Bernstein's murder. The arrest brought a mix of relief and anger to the community. While there was solace in knowing a suspect was in custody, the nature of the crime and the motivations behind it sparked outrage and fear. The case garnered national attention, highlighting issues of hate crimes and the influence of extremist groups. In the months following the arrest, prosecutors built their case against Woodward, emphasizing his affiliations and the premeditated nature of the attack. The trial of Samuel Woodward commenced in April 2024, more than 6 years after the tragic death of Blaze Bernstein. The proceedings were delayed due to various legal challenges, including questions about Woodward's mental competency and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on court schedules. The courtroom was filled with family members, friends, and community supporters, all seeking justice for Blaze. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, highlighting Woodward's affiliation with the Atomwaffen Division, a neo-Nazi group known for its violent and hateful ideology. They introduced evidence of Woodward's online activities, including messages and posts that expressed anti-Semitic and homophobic sentiments. Investigators had discovered a hate diary in Woodward's possession, detailing his interactions with gay men and his intentions to deceive and harm them. This evidence was crucial in establishing the motive behind the murder as a hate crime. The defense acknowledged that Woodward had killed Blaze but argued that the act was not premeditated. They contended that Woodward, who had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and obsessive-compulsive disorder, struggled with his own sexual identity and was provoked by an unwanted advance from Blaze. The defense aimed to reduce the charge from first-degree murder to a lesser offense, suggesting that Woodward's actions were impulsive rather than calculated. Throughout the trial, emotional testimonies were heard from both sides. Blaze's parents, Gideon Bernstein and Jean Pepper, spoke about their son's vibrant personality, his aspirations, and the profound loss they experienced. They emphasized Blaze's openness about his sexuality and his pride in his Jewish heritage. Their statements painted a picture of a young man full of potential, whose life was senselessly cut short. On July 3, 2024, after a nearly 3-month trial, the jury found Samuel Woodward guilty of first-degree murder with a hate crime enhancement. The verdict was met with a mixture of relief and sorrow by Blaze's family and supporters. The conviction underscored the recognition of the crime's hateful motivation and set a precedent for addressing such acts of violence. The sentencing hearing took place on November 15, 2024. The prosecution sought the maximum penalty, arguing that Woodward's actions were premeditated and driven by deep-seated hatred. The defense requested leniency, citing Woodward's mental health issues and lack of prior criminal history. After considering the arguments, the judge sentenced Samuel Woodward to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This sentence reflected the severity of the crime and the court's commitment to condemning hate-motivated violence. The conclusion of the trial and sentencing brought a sense of closure to Blaze's family and the community. While the pain of their loss remained, there was solace in knowing that justice had been served. The case highlighted the dangers of extremist ideologies and the importance of addressing hate crimes with the full force of the law. In the aftermath, Blaze's family continued to honor his memory through the #BlazeItForward movement, encouraging acts of kindness and community service. Their resilience and dedication served as a beacon of hope, transforming their personal tragedy into a force for positive change.
Okay, wow. You guys sent in a ton of stuff for us to look at for this deep dive. Looks like we've got articles, court documents, all about the murder of Blaze Bernstein.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So Blaze was 19 years old, a student at University of Pennsylvania, home in California for winter break, and just vanishes.
Just like that.
January 2nd, 2018. Told his parents he was going to meet a friend, and poof, gone.
Yeah, and you start to look at what he didn't take with him.
Oh, interesting.
Like his wallet, glasses, credit cards.
Left it all behind.
All left behind.
Wow.
And then he missed a dentist appointment like the very next day.
Oh, that's when you know something's really wrong.
Yeah, the alarm bells definitely deafening at that point, you just imagine, right?
I can't even imagine.
The fear in that community, everyone's searching, desperate for answers.
It's the kind of case that just sucks you in.
Oh, absolutely.
Immediate.
A total mystery.
So this is where Samuel Woodward comes in, right?
Right.
Former high school classmate, last person to see Blaze alive. His story is that he dropped Blaze off at a park, but
Even from the beginning, something just seems off.
the pieces don't quite fit.
No, not at all. And it gets so much worse so quickly.
Oh, no.
A week later, Blaze's body, they find it in a shallow grave
No.
in that same park. Over 20 stab wounds.
Oh, okay.
That's personal, that kind of brutality.
Chilling.
Yeah.
And Lake Forest, not exactly known for violence.
No.
Safe community, by all accounts. This must have been just devastating for them.
Absolutely rocked them.
So investigation kicks into high gear, and we're in the digital age, right? So what kind of digital trail did Woodward leave behind? What did they find?
Well, this is where it gets really, really interesting and disturbing.
Okay.
We're talking about geolocation data.
From his phone.
From his phone, completely contradicting his story. Then you've got social media posts, deleted messages, you name it. Even his, internet search history. It's like
a digital ghost.
Yeah, like a digital ghost just following him around.
Recording every move.
Exactly.
Okay, but I mean, everybody leaves a digital trail these days, right?
True. But this wasn't just that he was active online. It was where he was active.
Uh-oh.
That's the alarming part.
What do you mean?
Investigators found ties to, get this, the Adam Waffen division.
Okay, I've heard of neo-Nazis, but I don't know this group.
There's something else.
Really?
They're all about violence, terrorism. They actually want society to collapse.
Oh, wow.
They're trying to make it happen through violence.
So this isn't just hateful thoughts online?
No.
This is an ideology.
A violent one.
That glorifies violence.
Yeah. And it wasn't just some abstract thing for Woodward either. It gets specific.
What do you mean?
Well, his online activity, you see, it's very targeted.
Like what? What kind of stuff?
We're talking anti-Semitic rants, homophobic slurs, just awful, hateful stuff. And it wasn't just online either.
Really?
They found, they called it a hate diary, handwritten.
A physical diary.
Yeah, pages and pages full of, disturbing fantasies. And it was clear there were violent intentions towards specific groups, gay men in particular.
So we have a missing person case that becomes a hate crime investigation.
Right.
And all of this digital footprint of Woodward's, this becomes central to the prosecution's case.
Absolutely, because suddenly you have a motive.
Yeah.
Why Blaze? Why so brutal? This digital trail, it becomes a map.
A map to what?
Leading straight to what the prosecution argued was a hate-fueled attack, planned in advance. And for Blaze's family, imagine that.
Oh, God.
It's not just losing your son, it's knowing he was targeted for who he was.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So they arrest Woodward, they charge him with murder, and then
the waiting game begins.
the trial doesn't start for years.
6 years.
6 years? What happened? Why the delay?
Well, a lot of legal back and forth. There were questions about Woodward's mental competency to stand trial. Then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, that threw everything off.
Everything. And it makes you wonder, right?
About what?
How long is too long for a family to wait for justice? Especially in a case like this, a hate crime. It's a tough question.
It really is. But finally, 6 years later, the trial begins. Take us inside that courtroom. What was the prosecution's strategy? How did it make their case?
Well, they had a mountain of evidence, this digital footprint.
Okay.
They went through it all meticulously for the jury, connecting the dots.
Between
his ideology, the hateful stuff online, the postings, and the brutality of how Blaze was murdered.
to prove it wasn't random.
To prove that this was targeted. And it was driven by hate, pure and simple.
And what about that hate diary? The handwritten one.
Oh, that was key for them. Yeah. Because it showed his mindset. He wasn't just spouting hate online. He wrote about interactions with gay men.
Oh, wow.
Wrote about wanting to deceive them, harm them. It was chilling stuff.
I bet.
And the prosecution argued, this diary with all the online stuff, that was motive. That's why Blaze was targeted.
Because he was gay.
Exactly.
I can't imagine what it was like for Blaze's family.
Brutal.
Sitting there listening to all of that.
It's unimaginable.
Their son's life.
Yeah.
Reduced to evidence in a courtroom.
It's a lot to process.
It really is. So while the prosecution's building this case, the defense, well, they had a different story to tell, didn't they?
They did. A very different story. And it brought up some really tough questions about mental health, about responsibility.
Okay, so what was the defense's argument? How did they try to counter this whole hate crime narrative?
Well, They admitted that Woodward killed Blaze,
Okay.
but they insisted it wasn't planned, it wasn't premeditated.
Yeah.
Their whole argument, it really hinged on Woodward's mental health.
Okay, so he had been diagnosed with, you said Asperger's syndrome.
Asperger's syndrome, yep.
OCD.
Obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah.
And the defense, they claimed that these conditions, along with his own struggles with his sexuality,
Oh, interesting.
that all of that kind of contributed to this tragic impulsive act.
So they were saying it wasn't about hate.
Right. They painted this picture of Woodward as this young man overwhelmed by a situation that he just couldn't handle. And they said he was provoked by an unwanted advance from Blaze.
So they're basically trying to shift the focus, right, away from this calculated hate crime.
Yeah.
Trying to say this was like a crime of passion.
Yeah, more like a moment of weakness fueled by personal struggles
Yeah.
and mental health issues.
But how do you square that with all the evidence, all the hate speech, that disturbing stuff online? That seems, I don't know, pretty hard to explain away.
It was.
Yeah.
But the defense argued that, all that online stuff, as disturbing as it was all fantasy.
Fantasy?
Yeah, like not real life.
Okay.
And they used his mental health diagnoses to explain it. Right. Saying that, maybe he struggled to tell the difference between fantasy and reality.
Interesting.
They tried to separate the online persona from the real person.
Yeah.
Claiming that just because he said all this awful stuff online doesn't mean he was actually going to, act on it.
It's a really tough question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, how much weight should we give mental health diagnoses when we're talking about a crime, especially a hate crime? It's like you're trying to balance things.
Yeah.
You want to acknowledge the impact of mental health, but you also have to have accountability
You do.
for actions.
Absolutely.
I bet that jury had a lot to think about.
They did. And remember, this wasn't just like a legal debate. This was real life unfolding in a courtroom. You had Blaze's parents, Gideon Bernstein and Jean Pepper. They were there every single day. Wow. Listening to these two different stories about the man who killed their son. It's just
I can't even imagine.
just awful. But they were so strong.
They were.
Their composure throughout that whole trial, it was incredible.
It's hard to fathom, the emotional toll. I mean, losing a child is
Unimaginable.
every parent's worst nightmare. And then to have to go through this whole legal process.
Yeah.
It's excruciating.
It really is.
Did they get a chance to speak?
To address the court.
Yeah.
They did.
What did they say?
Their testimonies, they were so powerful.
Yeah.
They spoke about Blaze, about his personality, his dreams, his love of life. They talked about his acceptance of his own sexuality, his pride and his Jewish heritage. And it was this powerful reminder that behind all the legal arguments, all the digital evidence, there was a real person, a beloved son, a human being whose life was stolen. And their words, they really brought the human cost of all of this into focus.
It's easy to forget that sometimes.
It is.
That hate crimes, they're not just statistics. We're talking about real people.
Real families.
Families shattered by violence.
Yeah, and after weeks of testimony, arguments, the whole thing, the jury finally reached a verdict.
What was it?
Guilty
Wow.
of first-degree murder with a hate crime enhancement.
So they didn't buy the defense's argument
No.
that it was a crime of passion or...
Nope. The jury agreed with the prosecution. This was premeditated, and it was driven by hate.
That hate crime enhancement, that's significant.
Hugely significant. It sends a message
About what?
that this kind of violence, this hate-motivated violence, it won't be tolerated.
Right.
We recognize the harm these crimes cause, not just to the victim, but to the community, to society. And we will hold people accountable. We'll use the full force of the law to fight hate in all its forms.
It's a powerful statement.
It is.
So what was the sentence?
Life in prison without parole.
Wow.
The maximum sentence. And it reflected the severity of the crime, the judge's stance against hate. It was justice for Blaze.
But it can't bring him back.
No.
No sentence can really heal that wound. But Blaze's family, they've done something, I don't know, kind of remarkable in the face of all of this.
They really have. They've taken their grief, their pain, and turned it into something positive.
The hashtag Blaze It Forward movement.
Yeah, that's it. It's
Yeah.
all about spreading kindness and understanding. In his memory, instead of letting hate win, they're fighting back with love, with compassion.
That's amazing. So tell me more. What kinds of things are people doing to blaze it forward? Has it made a difference?
Oh, it's been incredible to see. People are doing all sorts of things, volunteering, homeless shelters,
Yeah.
donating to LGBTQ plus charities. Some are like just trying to be kinder, to strangers.
Simple acts of kindness.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are others organizing community events, promoting like interfaith dialogue, speaking out against prejudice.
Wow.
It's really about taking Blaze's spirit, that warmth, generosity, and like amplifying it, turning this awful act of hate into something positive.
That's what's so powerful about it, right? It's like hate might have taken Blaze, but it doesn't get to define him.
Exactly.
His legacy. It's all this kindness, this compassion, this connection.
Yeah.
Have you seen any specific examples of the movement that have really like stuck with you?
Oh, there are so many. There was this one woman, she started a kindness closet at a local school.
That's a kindness clause.
It's like filled with clothes, supplies, for students who need them.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And another group, they organized a walk for understanding,
Oh, I love that.
bringing people from all different backgrounds together.
Yeah.
And then just countless people sharing stories about, maybe reaching out to someone they normally wouldn't.
Right.
Just building those connections,
Yeah.
empathy, understanding. It's really beautiful, like a ripple effect of kindness.
Yeah. It's a real testament to the human spirit. Finding hope, meaning, even in the darkest of times. And it's a reminder for all of us, that we all have the power to make a difference.
They do.
We don't have to wait for big changes. Sometimes the smallest things, the smallest acts of kindness, they can have the biggest impact.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Blaze Bernstein's case, what are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with? I mean, we talked about a lot: hate, extremism, mental health, the legal system.
It's complicated.
It is. What's the message you want to leave them with?
I think more than anything, we all have a role to play in fighting hate and promoting understanding. It starts with awareness, right? Educating ourselves about the different ways hate can manifest, what contributes to it. It's about being honest with ourselves, about our own biases, our prejudices, and working to challenge them.
It's about speaking up.
Yes. When we see injustice, discrimination, we can't be silent.
Silence is complicity.
Exactly. We have to be upstanders, actively trying to create a more just, a more compassionate world.
And it's not just about like grand gestures.
No.
Or activism. It's about the choices we make every single day.
Right. How we treat each other. The little things.
Choosing kindness over indifference. Choosing empathy over judgment. Choosing connection over division.
It's about remembering that behind every statistic, every headline, there are real people, real lives impacted by this hate. And we all have the power to make a difference, to create a world where these tragedies like Blaze's become less and less frequent.
This has been a heavy deep dive, but it's also been, inspiring.
Yeah. Blaze's story, it's a reminder of how devastating hate can be, but it also shows us the power of love, the power of the human spirit to find hope, even in the face of such terrible loss.
And as we all go about our day, let's remember to blaze it forward. Let's choose kindness. Let's choose compassion. Let's make the world a little brighter. One act of understanding at a time.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Knowledge is power, and with that power comes responsibility. Go out there and be the change you want to see.